Hey guys, wanted to do a quick video for you all to talk about a new study that came out in the Journal of Applied Physiology recently. And really interesting stuff. All of us, well, I don't want to say all of us, but most of us weight trainers out there use caffeine, whether it's coffee, myself I love Monster, pre-workout, whatever. There's a really high usage of caffeine, especially amongst people who weight train or do fitness or something of that nature. And so one of the things I hear a lot is, well, I don't want to use caffeine too much because I'll build up a tolerance to it, and then it won't work anymore. And I followed this myself for a long time. I would try to wean myself off caffeine, and then reintroduce it before like a meet to get the benefits of it. The problem is when I took it off, I felt worse. So there was the new study looked at, basically they took cyclists. Now this is cyclists, so this isn't weight training, all right? These are cyclists. And they took 40 cyclists, and they looked at people, and they looked at their habitual caffeine intake. And so they broke them down into low, moderate, or high. And the low group was anywhere from basically nothing to 100 milligrams of caffeine a day. The moderate group was anywhere from 100 to 180 milligrams of caffeine per day. And the high group was above 190 milligrams of caffeine per day. So they broke them down in these three groups and looked at, and the averages ended up being like 58 milligrams of caffeine per day in the low group. The high group was something like, or the moderate group was like something like 143 milligrams per day. And then the high group was like 350. So the high group was much, much higher on average than the lower moderate. And they looked at if they took them, so these people are habitually consuming this amount of caffeine. And they had them take in 6 milligrams of caffeine per kilo of body weight and then perform cycling and look at time to exhaustion and all these different things. And so that would be, for somebody my size, that's like over 500 milligrams of caffeine. So a pretty good dose. And what they found was that in all the groups, they got an improvement in performance on average. There was no difference between groups, meaning that the high group actually got just as much boost in performance as the control group. However, when you actually splice the data a little bit more, what you find is that the caffeine, the supplement, more reliably increased performance in the low and moderate groups compared to the high group. What does this actually mean? Well, Eric Helms actually did a really nice review on this in Mass, which is a publication that reviews different studies. It's fabulous. I've talked about it before. It's awesome. I'll put a link to it. But he basically kind of analyzed this, and what you see is that in the low group, 7 out of 12 people had an improvement relative to control. In the moderate, you had an improvement. I'm sorry. So basically the low and moderate were the same. There was about a 57 to 58% improvement. 57 and 58% of the people consuming it got an improvement. Whereas in the high group, the high habitual caffeine users, only 35% got an improvement in performance. What does this all actually mean? Well, overall, on the average, there was no difference between groups. Now that may sound weird based on saying, well, 58% got an improvement versus 35%. But keep in mind, there's only about 13 people per group. That means there is a lot of individual variability. And so you see a lot of individual differences. And that causes a lot of what we call noise in the data or standard deviations. And so I think what you're going to see is that I think, yes, you do get an improvement if you habitually use caffeine and you take caffeine, you still get an improvement. But that the people who are consuming low or moderate amounts of caffeine, if they take a high dose, it's more likely to give them an improvement based on this data. Now, you can't say that if you were publishing it in a scientific paper, but I feel comfortable saying it here. So when they look at time to exhaustion, all these different things, there seems to be an improvement. So what we can say that this probably says very likely is that mostly what we see a decrease in performance with caffeine, or not performance, but mostly what we see in terms of a tolerance is the subjective feelings. So how tired do you feel? What is your mood? These sorts of subjective feedbacks. But it looks like there are benefits to caffeine intake that go beyond the tolerance factor, okay? So even if you have become tolerant to caffeine, you consume a high dose. If you take it as a supplement or take it, in a high dose, even with habitual consumption of a high dose, that dose will still give you a performance benefit. What does this mean practically for you as a weight trainer, since these are cyclists? Well, caffeine in studies seems to more reliably increase lower body strength versus upper body strength. So if you're a powerlifter, having 500 milligrams of caffeine before an event may be a benefit to you. And I think a lot of that benefit is going to go beyond the subjective feelings. It's going to go to there's actually a physiological improvement. Caffeine affects the nervous system, affects the muscular system. It improves feelings of fatigue. Now, a lot of people would say, well, why not just take no caffeine whatsoever, and then the day of a meet, have 500 milligrams? Great question. I have two different thoughts on that. One, if you're not used to taking it at all, and you take it and the first time you take it's on meet day, you may be very jittery. You may subjectively not feel good, especially with 500 milligrams. It's a hefty dose. And it may actually cause you to perform not optimally because you're just unable to, because it's so different from how you've trained. I'm a big believer in kind of practicing how you play. If you're going to introduce big variables on competition day, I think you're asking for problems. Also, if you don't have any caffeine intake, that means that during your training cycle itself, you're performing not as well as you could have if you were taking caffeine. That means the strength adaptations that you're getting may not be as good as what you could possibly get if you were using caffeine. Therefore, you may actually have a lower overall effective training cycle, and thus actually not be as good on meet day. So I think what this says, what this study says, if I had to give a big takeaway, is that I think consuming a moderate amount of caffeine regularly is probably a good thing for performance with weight training or cycling or any kind of something that is very fatiguing or that requires a high amount of muscular strength or effort. I think consuming a moderate amount, around 150 to 250 milligrams a day is probably your sweet spot. And then if you want to add caffeine on top of that, like a 500 milligram dose or 6 milligrams per kilogram on your specific competition day, I think that's going to give you the best bang for your buck. I think it's going to enable your training cycle to be more effective while also making sure that it doesn't diminish the effects too much on the day you compete. So again, I'll put a link to more detail on that study in the description. And guys, if you're liking these videos, please click like and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to try and get more regular with doing these and get you guys more good information so you can make the best choices for your training. Also, Don't forget to check out my Make America Science Again shirts at shopbyolayne.com. And I'll catch you guys next time.